Lesson 3.2 covers some applications of linear equations. Let's first look at a few applications where the equations are easy to put in slope-intercept form. Our first example, suppose you work for a company where you can earn $10 per hour. In addition to your salary, you're going to receive a $50 per week bonus no matter how many hours you work. First, I want to come up with an equation that serves as a formula for computing your weekly salary, and you always want to be sure to state what your variables represent. In this example, I can use any letters I want to for the variables. I'm usually just going to stick with an X and a Y. If you're ever told the variable in the problem, be sure to use the variable you're told. I'm asked to find the formula to compute the weekly salary. So I'm going to need a variable for my salary. And also, if you look back in the equation, another amount that's going to change from week to week is the number of hours I work. So I'm going to need a variable for the number of hours worked. So let's begin with the variable for the salary. And I'm just going to let that be a Y. So Y is going to be your weekly salary. Well, I find Y by taking the number of hours I've worked and multiplying them by the $10 per hour, and then adding the $50 per week bonus. So I'm going to begin with 10x, and this time I'm just going to let x be the number of hours per week that I've worked. Well, I take those number of hours per week that I've worked and multiply them by 10. And then I add my $50 bonus. So I end up with the equation y equals 10x plus 50. Now in part B, how much money will I make if I work 40 hours in 1 week? We'll use the equation that you just got from part A, the y equals 10x plus 50. And this time I'm working 40 hours. X was my hours worked, so I'm going to replace the x with a 40. So I get y equals 10 times 40 plus 50. So this gives me y equals 400 plus 50, so I get 450. When you're giving me the final solutions, don't include the y equals. You're asked how much money will you make. Well, you'll make $450. So on the quiz or the test, you're just going to type in $450. If your final answer is money, be sure to include the dollar sign. In part C, if your salary for 1 month totaled $470, how many hours did you work? We'll begin with the equation from part A, y equals 10x plus 50. This time I'm given my weekly salary and I'm asked for the hours worked. So the 470 goes in place for the y. So I have 470 equals 10x plus 50. I want to solve for x, so first subtract 50 from each side. And this gives me 420 equals 10x. Next, divide each side by 10, and I get 42 equals x. X was the hours that I worked, and that's what I was asked for. So I worked 42 hours that week. Next, your cell phone company offers a plan where you only pay $15 a month, but you have to pay 25 cents per minute used. In part A, I want to come up with an equation that serves as a formula for computing your monthly bill, and be sure to state what your variables represent. So I'm wanting the monthly bill amount, so I'm going to begin with y equals, and I'm going to let y be that monthly cell phone bill. Now look at what I'm charged. I'm charged 25 cents per minute, but I don't know how many minutes I'm using. So I'm going to let x be the minutes used. And for every minute used, I multiply that by 0.25. So I have 0.25x, where x is the number of minutes used per month. In addition to this per minute fee, I pay $15 a month, so I add the 15 to this. So I get the equation y equals 0.25x plus 15. Now in part B, if I talk 1,000 minutes in 1 month, what will your monthly bill be? So take the equation we just found, y equals 0.25x plus 15. X was the number of minutes, so I plug the 1,000 in for the x. So this gives me 250 plus 15, so I end up with 265. Y was my monthly bill amount, and that's what I'm asked for, so the monthly bill would be $265. And then finally in part C, if your bill for 1 month totaled $64, how many minutes did you talk that month? So the bill amount was 64, and that's my y. So begin with your y equals 0.25x plus 15. And this time I'm going to plug the 64 in for my y. To solve for x, I subtract 15 from each side. So I get 49 equals 0.25x. Now divide each side by 0.25, and I get 196 equals x. X was the number of minutes used, so I talked 196 minutes that month. Now let's look at a few economic applications. Well, in economics, revenue is the amount of money you make from a particular product. Suppose you're buying a textbook from the bookstore, and for this class, the last time I looked at the price of the textbook, it was $250. So the bookstore's revenue from selling you that textbook would be $250. Well, the cost is the amount of money it cost you to produce that product. Or if you're the bookstore, your cost would be the amount of money it cost you to buy the textbook. So if you pay the bookstore $250, they had a cost for that book. So the bookstore purchased the textbook from a company. The amount that they paid the company for that book would be their cost. Well, profit is the amount of revenue you have after you subtract the cost. So the bookstore had to pay a company a certain amount for that book, and then they sold it to you for $250. So the revenue that the bookstore made was $250, but they have to subtract their cost to determine the profit that they made. So if that book costs them $200, the $250 minus the $200 would give the bookstore a profit of $50. Well, we're going to look at the concept of breaking even. To break even means that your revenue is equal to your cost. In other words, you didn't gain any money, but you didn't lose any money. You have a net profit of zero. Your profit is $0. So often companies want to know what this break-even point is. So for the bookstore, if their break-even point would be to sell 300 books, they know that if they can sell over 300 books, they're going to make a profit. If they cannot sell 300 books, they're not going to make a profit. They're going to lose money. So that break-even point is critical often with companies if they're deciding whether it's going to earn them a profit to sell a product or not. So let's look at this first example. A marketing department estimates that no more than 450 units of a certain product can be sold. Costs are expected to be given by the equation C equals 80x plus 7,500, and revenues by the equation R equals 95x, where x is the number of units that are sold. If you were the manager of that firm, would you produce and sell this product? Why or why not? So looking back, I know that I can only sell 450 units. I'm not expected to be able to sell any more than that. So I want to know, what is my break-even amount? How many units do I need to sell in order to start making a profit? And how does that compare to the 450? So I begin with my break-even. Breaking even is when the revenue equals the cost. Well, my revenue was 95x and my cost was 80x plus 7,500. So that gives me the equation 95x equals 80x plus 7,500. Now I want to solve this equation for x. So begin by subtracting 80x from each side, and I get 15x equals 7,500. Now divide each side by 15, and I get x equals 500. So my break-even amount is 500. This means the company must sell 500 units of the product just to break even. And that breaking even means a profit of 0. If they just sell 500, they've made a profit of 0. In order to earn a profit, they're going to have to sell over 500 units. Well, since they estimated that they can only sell 450 units, they're not going to sell enough units to even break even. They're going to lose money on this product. So they do not need to make this product because they will not sell enough units to break even. In the next example, the marketing department estimates that at least 800 units of a certain product can be sold. Costs are expected to be given by the equation C equals 1,750x plus 95,175, and revenues by the equation R equals 1,975x, where x is the number of units sold. And again, if you were the manager of this firm, would you produce and sell this product? Why or why not? So again, I want to begin with finding the break-even value. You break even when revenue equals the cost. Well, my revenue is 1,975x, so I get 1,975x equals, and then my cost is 1,750x plus 95,175. So now I want to solve this equation for x. So begin by subtracting the 1,750x from each side. This gives me 225x equals 95,175. Now divide each side by 225, and I get that x equals 423. So this means the company must sell 423 units of the product to just break even. They expect to sell at least 800 units. So they're going to meet and exceed the break-even value. So they estimate that they can sell 800 units. They're not only going to break even, but they're going to exceed that break-even value and make a profit. So the company should make this product. In the next example, a company is considering producing hedge trimmers. The company will have a one-time startup cost of $6,000 to purchase the machinery. On top of this, each trimmer will cost the company $45 to produce, and they plan on selling each trimmer for $60. So first, I want to find the equations to represent the cost and the revenue for producing X hedge trimmers. So this is an example where I'm given the variables to use. So I'm not going to use Y's. Since I'm told that the cost is C and the revenue is R, I'm going to use a C and an R. And I'm told that X is the number of hedge trimmers I'm selling, so I'm going to use that variable X. And then in part B, I'm asked how many trimmers must be sold for the company to break even. So let's begin with the cost in part A. What is going to cost the company money? Well, the company is going to have to pay money for each trimmer they produce. For every trimmer they produce, it costs them $45. Well, since they're producing X trimmers, I'm going to have 45X. In addition to that, I had the $6,000 startup cost. So my cost equation is 45X plus the $6,000. Now for the revenue, look at what money the company is taking in. The company is taking in $60 for each trimmer. So my revenue is 60X. Now determine how many trimmers have to be sold for the company to break even. To break even, the revenue equals the cost. So my revenue was 60X and my cost was 45X plus 6,000. So this gives me the equation 60X equals 45X plus 6,000. Begin by subtracting 45X from each side. So I get 15X equals 6,000. Now divide each side by 15 and I get X equals 400. So 400 trimmers must be sold for the company to break even. Now for the final example, it cost a small recording studio $16,200 to prepare a compact disc. This is a one-time fixed cost that covers recording, package design, and so on. Variable costs, including such things as manufacturing, marketing, and royalties, are $450 per CD. The CD is sold to the music shops for $18. So I want to find the equations that represent the cost and the revenue from producing X CDs. And then in part B, how many CDs must be sold for the company to break even? So let's begin by looking at the cost. Look back through the equation and you decide what is costing this recording company money. Well, the recording company has to pay $4.50 for each CD they produce. If they're producing X CDs, I'm going to start with 450 times X. In addition to this, they have the one-time fixed cost of $16,200. So my cost is 4.5X, or if you wanted to write it 4.50X, plus the $16,200. Now my revenue, look at how the recording company is going to earn money. They're going to earn money by selling the CD to the music shops for $18 each. So my revenue is 18X. Now for part B, how many CDs must be sold for the company to break even? Breaking even is when revenue equals the cost. So I have 18X equals 4.5X plus 16,200. Subtract 4.5X from each side, and I get 13.5X equals 16,200. Now divide each side by 13.5, and X equals 1,200. So the company must sell 1,200 CDs to break even.